You think science is just men in white lab coats saving lives? Sometimes it looks more like a horror movie you can't turn off. Today, we're ranking the most disturbing human experiments in history, starting with the morally questionable and ending with pure nightmare fuel. Iowa, 1939. A psychologist named Wendell Johnson had a theory about stuttering. He believed it was learned behavior caused by negative reinforcement. So naturally, he decided to test this on the most vulnerable subjects he could find, orphans. Here's how it worked. Imagine you're a child in an orphanage. You have no parents, no protectors, no one looking out for you. One day, some researchers show up and start praising half the kids for how well they speak. You're in the other half. Instead of praise, you get psychological torture. Every time you speak, they interrupt you. They tell you you're beginning to stutter. They criticize every word that comes out of your mouth. That's not how you say it. You're doing it wrong. There's something wrong with the way you talk. Remember, these were children who spoke perfectly fine before the experiment started. The results? The kids who were relentlessly criticized developed severe speech problems. Some stopped speaking altogether, not just during the experiment, for the rest of their lives. Johnson knew what he'd done was monstrous. He buried the study. It wasn't discovered until 2001. The University of Iowa eventually paid over $900,000 to the survivors. But money doesn't fix what happens to a child's brain when the only adults in their life systematically destroy their confidence for science. If you think science should have limits, go ahead and hit that like button and subscribe, because this list only gets worse from here. South Africa during apartheid. The military had what they considered a problem: gay and lesbian soldiers. Their solution? Cure them. This wasn't conversion therapy as we know it today. This was medical torture on an industrial scale. It started with aversion therapy electroshock treatment while showing soldiers images. The electricity would surge through their bodies until they vomited, passed out, or both. When that didn't work, doctors escalated. Chemical castration, hormone injections that ravaged their bodies. And when that still didn't work, they went further. Forced gender reassignment surgeries, without proper anesthesia, without consent. Soldiers were strapped to tables and surgically mutilated because the apartheid regime decided their identity was a disease that needed cutting out. Between 1971 and 1989, an estimated 900 forced surgeries were performed at military hospitals. The head of the program, Dr. Aubrey Levin, wasn't some rogue psychopath. He was called as an expert witness in court cases. He was respectable. Here's the irony that'll make your head spin. A government that claimed to be cleaning up its military committed atrocities far worse than anything they were trying to cure. Levin eventually fled to Canada. He wasn't punished for the hundreds of lives he destroyed in South Africa. He was arrested years later for sexually assaulting his male patients in Calgary. Evil doesn't retire. It just relocates. How long would it take you to become a monster? Not years. Not months. 6 days. Stanford University, 1971. Psychologist Philip Zimbardo wanted to study the psychology of prison life. He converted a basement into a mock prison, recruited college students, and randomly assigned them roles, guards or prisoners. These weren't criminals. They weren't sadists. They were normal kids who answered an ad for a 2-week psychology experiment paying $15 a day. It took 36 hours for the first breakdown. The guards started with basic authority enforcing rules, doing counts. By day 2, they were waking prisoners at a M for arbitrary head counts. By day 3, they were forcing them to clean toilets with their bare hands. Bags over heads. Sleep deprivation. Forced nudity. Psychological humiliation designed to break human dignity piece by piece. One prisoner had a full mental breakdown and had to be released. The guards didn't see it as a sign to stop. They saw it as weakness and doubled down on the others. Zimbardo himself got so consumed by his role as prison superintendent that he didn't see what was happening. When his girlfriend, a graduate student, visited the experiment, she was horrified. She's the one who convinced him to shut it down after 6 days of escalating abuse. Here's the disturbing part: these transformations happened faster than anyone expected. Give someone absolute power over another human being in a fake prison, and watch how quickly civilization peels away. If you had absolute power over a stranger in a fake prison, how long do you think you'd last before you broke? Tell me in the comments. I want to see who's being honest with themselves. This sounds like a conspiracy theory. It's not. It's in the declassified CIA documents. 1950 seconds and 60s, height of the Cold War. The CIA was terrified the Soviets had developed mind control techniques, so they decided to develop their own first. Welcome to MKUltra. Operation Midnight Climax was one of the program's most depraved branches. Here's how it worked. The CIA set up fake brothels in San Francisco and New York. They hired sex workers to lure unsuspecting men inside. Once the men were settled in, the workers dosed their drinks with LSD massive amounts, way beyond what anyone would take recreationally. CIA agents sat behind two-way mirrors, watching and taking notes while American citizens lost their minds. No consent, no medical supervision, no follow-up care. Some subjects had violent psychological breaks. Some never recovered. The CIA didn't care. They wanted data on how drugs could be used for interrogation and mind control, and they were willing to destroy as many lives as necessary to get it. The program ran for over a decade. Hundreds, possibly thousands of people were dosed without their knowledge. Students, prisoners, hospital patients, random people at bars. If the CIA thought you'd make good data, you were fair game. Here's the sickest part, you were paying for this. Your tax dollars funded the CIA drugging American citizens in fake brothels while agents took notes like you were lab rats. Most MKUltra documents were destroyed in 1973 when the program was exposed. We'll never know the full scope of what they did. But what we do know came from the documents they didn't manage to burn in time. What comes next makes everything before it look like child's play. World War II. Imperial Japan. In occupied Manchuria, the Japanese military established a research facility called Unit 731. On paper, it was for water purification and epidemic prevention. In reality, it was a factory for atrocities that still haunt historians today. The commander, Shiro Ishii, had immunity from prosecution. That gave him freedom to do anything he wanted to human subjects, and he did. Vivisection without anesthesia. Doctors would cut open living prisoners, men, women, children, to study their organs while they were still functioning. They wanted to see how the body responded to disease in real time, so they couldn't use anesthesia because it might affect the results. Patients were held down, screaming, while surgeons calmly dissected them alive. Frostbite experiments. Prisoners were taken outside in sub-zero temperatures and left until their limbs froze solid. Then researchers would test different methods of thawing, sometimes by dunking frozen arms directly into boiling water to see what happened to the tissue. What happened was the flesh boiled off the bone while the victim was still conscious. Pressure chamber tests. Subjects were locked in chambers where pressure was increased until their eyes popped out of their skulls. Researchers documented how long it took and what happened to internal organs under extreme conditions. Weapon testing. Flamethrowers, grenades, biological weapons, all tested on living human beings tied to stakes. They called them logs, not people. Logs. Between 1935 and 1945, an estimated 200,000 to 300,000 people died in Unit 731 experiments. Most were Chinese civilians. Some were Soviet prisoners. Some were Allied POWs. And here's the final gut punch. After the war, the United States granted immunity to the doctors and scientists of Unit 731 in exchange for their research data. The same data obtained through unimaginable torture. Shiro Ishii never faced trial. He lived comfortably in Japan until he died of throat cancer in 1959. The Soviets tried some Unit 731 members in the Khabarovsk war crimes trials, but the Americans blocked broader prosecution because they wanted the biological warfare data. Evil wasn't punished. It was rewarded with immunity and a pension. The scariest part isn't the experiments themselves. It's that all of this was done in the name of progress. People in positions of authority convinced themselves that the data was worth it, that the suffering of the few would benefit the many, that science justified stripping away human dignity. If you made it to the end without losing faith in humanity, hit that notification bell. And if you want to see how nature can be even more cruel than mankind, click this video about the worst deaths in the natural world. I'll see you there.